My brother's wife answered the door of my own house in my bathrobe. Not her bathrobe. Mine. The white one with my initials monogrammed on the chest pocket. The one I had custom ordered from a boutique in South Beach 2 Christmases ago. She stood in the doorframe with her arms crossed, barefoot on my Brazilian hardwood floors, and looked at me the way you'd look at a solicitor who knocked during dinner. "Vivienne," she said. Not a greeting. A warning. I had 2 suitcases with me, a rolling carry-on and a duffel I'd packed in 40 minutes after landing at Miami International, at 11 in the morning following a red-eye from Seattle. I had just closed the biggest commercial contract of my career, a boutique hotel development on the Olympic Peninsula, and all I wanted was to come home to my beach house, open the sliding doors, and listen to the water. Instead, I was standing on my own front porch staring at my sister-in-law in my bathrobe. "Cassie," I said slowly, "why are you wearing that?" She tilted her head. "Derek and I were just talking about you, actually. We think it's better if you stay somewhere else for a little while. The baby keeps odd hours, and you know how Derek gets when he's sleep-deprived. This is my house. It's a home right now." She smiled, soft and immovable as a wall. "There's a difference." She closed the door. I heard the deadbolt turn. I stood on that porch for a full minute, listening to the Atlantic, letting the salt air tell me that what just happened was real. Then I pulled out my phone and called my brother. He didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. I texted. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then the dots came back, and what he sent me was, "Give us a few days, Viv. Please. Cassie needs stability right now. You know how it is." I did not know how it was. Because this was my house. My name on the deed. My mortgage paid off 3 years ahead of schedule with money I had earned doing structural assessments in 100-degree summers and client pitches at 6 in the morning and 12-hour drives between job sites. My money. My deed. My bathrobe. And before I tell you exactly how I made sure every one of them paid for it legally, permanently, and on the record, I want to ask you something. Leave it in the comments. What is the most outrageous thing a family member has ever done to you when they thought you were too kind to fight back? I read every single one. I booked a hotel on Brickell. Clean room, 14th floor, a view of the bay that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. I ordered room service I barely touched, and sat at the desk trying to reconstruct the timeline of how my brother ended up living in my beach house, with his wife and infant son, and treating me like a guest who had overstayed her welcome at her own property. The short version is this. 8 months ago, Derek called me from a gas station parking lot in Hialeah. He and Cassie had lost their rental. Their landlord had sold the building, and the new owner wasn't honoring existing leases. They had a 4-week-old baby and nowhere to go. He was not crying, which meant it was worse than if he had been. Derek only cries when he knows it will work. When it won't, he just goes very quiet and waits. I had the beach house. I had been living in Seattle for 18 months, on an extended contract. The house was sitting empty, except for occasional weekends when I flew down. I told him 6 weeks. I was specific. I even wrote it in a text message, which I screenshot and saved in a folder labeled, optimistically, not necessary. 6 weeks. Just until they found a place. That was 8 months ago. In those 8 months, Derek had gotten a new car, a dark green Range Rover, that was parked in my driveway when I arrived. Cassie had, apparently, redecorated my guest room into a nursery, and the 2 of them had, as I was about to discover, begun quietly telling the neighbors, the mail carrier, and at least one person from their church that they owned the place. That detail came later. First came the lawyer. His name was David Park. He handled my real estate contracts, and had the particular energy of someone who has seen every variety of human catastrophe, and is mildly entertained by all of it. I called him from the hotel that first night. He listened without interrupting, which is how I knew he was taking it seriously, because David Park interrupts everyone. "How long have they been there?" he asked when I finished. 8 months. He exhaled through his nose. "Vivienne, Florida landlord-tenant law doesn't care whose name is on the deed. They have a baby in the house. They've been there 8 months. If they've been receiving mail there, if they can produce any evidence of residency, a utility in their name, a delivery address, anything, a judge is going to treat them as tenants. Not trespassers. They are not tenants. There is no lease. An oral agreement for occupancy, even informal, still creates a tenancy at will. With an infant in the home, no judge in Miami-Dade is going to rubber stamp an emergency removal. We're looking at a formal eviction process." He paused. 4 months. Minimum. Probably 6. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. I thought about Cassie in my bathrobe. The monogram on the chest. "They're waiting for a settlement," David said. "They want you to pay them to leave. Classic squeeze play. They moved in. They got comfortable. They calculated that your desire to avoid a drawn-out legal fight would be greater than their desire to stay. They're betting on your patience running out before their nerve does." I stared at the bay from my hotel window. What if I just changed the locks? Self-help eviction is illegal in Florida. They could sue you. And win. He said it without apology, the way a doctor tells you the diagnosis. "Vivienne, I know what you want to hear. I can't give it to you tonight. Let me think. I hung up. I watched a cruise ship move slowly across the dark water and I thought about Derek. My brother is 2 years older than me and has spent his entire adult life being talented enough to start things and not quite disciplined enough to finish them. He had a landscaping business that made good money until he stopped showing up to jobs. He had a food truck that lasted one summer. He started a personal training certification 3 different times. Between these attempts, I lent him money. Not large amounts individually, but they accumulated. $1,200 here, $3,000 there. The time his car was repossessed and he needed first and last for a new apartment that was $7,000. I did not keep a formal ledger because I did not want to be the kind of sister who kept a formal ledger. I understand now that this was not generosity, it was training. Every time I said yes without conditions, without documentation, without a conversation about repayment, I was teaching him that the word no was not a real option for me. I was teaching him that I was a resource, not a person, that my boundaries were made of the same material as his promises, flexible, perishable, ultimately decorative. The night he called from the gas station, I said yes because there was a 4-week-old baby, and because I still believed, somewhere in the part of me that had not yet done the math, that he would not do this to me. I was wrong. He had done exactly this. And now he was sleeping in my house with his wife and his son and a Range Rover in the driveway, and he was waiting for me to get tired and write a check. I went 3 days without contact. I did not call, did not text, did not drive past the house. I let them sit in the quiet of the Atlantic shore with their mornings on my back deck and their evenings on my couch, and I let them believe they had won because comfortable people do not stay alert. Arrogant people stop reading the fine print. On the 3rd day, I started reading. I am a developer. I know how to research properties, pull public records, trace titles. I know what databases exist and what they contain, and what people forget is visible when they assume no one is looking. I started with what I knew. Derek was broke. He had always been broke. But broke on paper and broke in fact are sometimes very different things, and I wanted to know which version of broke my brother was. What I found instead was a filing in the Southern District of Florida Federal Court. 14 months ago. Derek Allen Marsh, Chapter 13 Bankruptcy Reorganization, later converted to Chapter 7 Discharge. I downloaded the petition and the schedules and the final discharge order and read them on my hotel room bed with a glass of water I forgot to drink. He had discharged $43,000 in debt. Credit cards, a personal loan, a medical bill from when the baby was born early, and spent 11 days in the NICU that one I had not known about. He had stood before a federal trustee and declared, under oath, that he had no cash savings, no liquid assets, no secondary income, no property interests, no financial resources of any meaningful kind. Schedule B, personal property. Line 16, cash on hand. His answer, $0. Line 17, deposits of money, checking, savings, any deposits. His answer, $0. Line 22, other property of any kind not listed. His answer, none. At the bottom of every page, the standard warning printed in plain language. I declare under penalty of perjury that the information provided in this petition is true and correct. Knowingly and fraudulently concealing assets or making a false statement in connection with a bankruptcy case may result in fines up to $250,000 or imprisonment up to 5 years, or both. I sat with this for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called David Park. I need to talk to you about something, I said. Not the eviction, something else. He was quiet for a moment. Then, should I be excited or concerned? Probably both. Here's what I had built. 8 months ago, 2 months before the bankruptcy discharge was finalized, Derek called me. Not from a gas station. From my number. He had left his phone at my beach house during a visit, and borrowed mine to reach Cassie. While he had it, he sent himself a text from my number. Short message. The beach house is yours if anything happens to me, you know that. I had not sent it. I had not written it. I found it in my sent messages 3 days later and asked him about it, and he laughed and said he was just messing around, being dramatic. Don't be weird about it. I screenshotted it and saved it in the folder I had labeled, not necessary. I also had a voicemail. From 11 months ago, when Derek was in the middle of his bankruptcy proceedings. He left it at 2 a.m, slightly drunk, the way he got sometimes when he felt guilty enough to be honest. He said, Viv, I just need you to know I'm going to pay you back everything. I've been talking to someone about doing some work on the side and I think I can clear what I owe you in like 8-9 months. I just need things to settle down. I have this opportunity. It's real. Just trust me. 8 to 9 months of side income. During a period when he had sworn to the federal government that he had no income, no assets, no financial resources of any kind. I had the voicemail. I had the text from my own number. And now, I had a plan. I called Derek on a Thursday morning from a number he didn't recognize. He picked up on the second ring because my brother has never been able to ignore an unknown caller. Too many opportunities have arrived that way. Hello? Derek. I made my voice flat. Tired. I have spent 31 years being the capable one, the together one, the one who does not ask for help. It was not difficult to perform the version of myself that had finally run out of capacity. I'm done. I can't do this. A pause. Then carefully, like he was handling something that might startle. Viv. Come on. We're family. I know. That's why I can't keep fighting. I want this to be over. I let a breath go. I talked to my lawyer. He says the fastest way to resolve everything is if I transfer ownership directly to you. No eviction, no courts, no mess. The silence that followed had a particular quality. It was the silence of someone doing mental arithmetic very quickly. Transfer ownership. Derek repeated. Put the house in your name. You've been living there. You love it. Cassie loves it. It makes more sense than going through months of back and forth. I paused. I just want to move on. Viv. His voice had shifted. Warmer now. Relieved. I think that's the right call. I really do. We can make this work for everyone. There's just one legal thing we need to handle first, I said. My attorney says if I gift you the property outright, the IRS treats it as a taxable gift above the annual exclusion. The tax liability would be close to $300,000. You'd have to sell the house just to cover it. $300,000. The warmth drained. We don't have that. I know. So there's a workaround. I kept my voice practical, businesslike, the way I talk on job sites. Instead of a gift, we document it as a sale. We establish on paper that the down payment I made on the house, $220,000, actually came from you. That you gave it to me to hold when you were going through your financial difficulties. That way, it's not a gift. It's you reclaiming your own equity. No gift tax. Very slow. Very quiet. How do we document that? It's called an equity contribution affidavit. Standard real estate document. You sign a sworn statement confirming that you provided the $220,000 in cash and entrusted it to me. We file it with the county title office, and it legitimizes the transfer. Clean, simple, legal. A longer pause this time. I could almost hear him weighing it. He wasn't completely careless. He knew that signing things had consequences. But greed is a very effective analgesic. It numbs the part of the brain that reads warning labels. Does this create any tax exposure for me? He asked. I don't want the IRS digging around. No, I said. This is a county document for property transfer. It goes into the title file. It doesn't trigger any federal reporting. Okay, he said. I heard him exhale, slow and satisfied, the sound of a man who believes he has just won something. Send it over. Let's get this done. I forwarded everything to David Park with a 4-word message. The trap is set. The conference room at Park & Associates occupied the northeast corner of the 14th floor of a glass tower in Brickell, and it looked exactly like a place where no one had ever been comfortable. It was all pale, stone, and chrome, and a floor-to-ceiling window that framed downtown Miami like a painting. There was a court reporter in the corner, with her machine. A videographer behind a tripod. David sat at the head of the table with his hands folded, in the gray suit he wore when he wanted to look like a judge. I sat across from the empty chairs and waited. They arrived 7 minutes late, which was a choice. Derek came in first, wearing the blazer he reserved for occasions he considered important job interviews, loan applications, Thanksgiving dinner, when he wanted to impress someone. He had a confident walk, the walk of a man who had already decided this was a formality. Cassie followed in a dress I recognized from my own closet. Not my bathrobe this time. My navy wrap dress, the one I'd bought in London 18 months ago. She caught my eye and did not blink. She had gone into my closet. She had put on my clothes, and then she had walked into my lawyer's office wearing them. I kept my face still. I folded my hands on the table and I watched them. They sat down without greeting. Derek looked at the camera, then at David, then drummed his fingers once on the table. Let's keep this quick, he said. Cassie's been on her feet all morning. Of course, David said. His voice had the temperature of a tile floor in January. Before we proceed, I'm required to establish some ground rules. This affidavit is a sworn legal document. The court reporter is transcribing everything said in this room. The video is being recorded for the official record. Derek waved a hand. You mentioned. It's fine, sir. David did not raise his voice. He did not need to. I am an officer of the court. I am required, before you sign, to inform you of the legal weight of this document. You are about to swear under penalty of perjury that you held $220,000 in personal cash savings, and that you transferred these funds to your sister for the purpose of securing the beach house property. He held Derek's eyes. If this statement is found to conflict with any other sworn financial filing, you could face felony charges. Do you understand? The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when something is about to happen. This was Derek's exit. This was the door. A smart person, in that moment, would have felt the shape of the thing, would have asked why there was a videographer for a county title document, would have remembered or tried to remember whether he had recently sworn to anything that might contradict what he was about to say. Derek is not stupid. He is just convinced that he is smarter than everyone else in the room. And that conviction, that specific variety of arrogance, is what makes it impossible for people like him to receive a warning. They hear it as a challenge. He smiled at the camera. I know exactly what money I have, he said. I've kept cash savings my whole life. Old school. You do what you gotta do to protect your family. He shrugged. Let's sign. David slid the affidavit across the table. Derek uncapped the pen. He stated his name clearly, directly into the camera, with the easy confidence of a man who believes the camera is on his side. He signed with a heavy hand. The signature of someone who has decided the deal is already done. Cassie signed next. Her hand was steady. She didn't hesitate. She believed they had outmaneuvered me. She had put on my dress to come here, and she had signed my downfall, and she believed that tonight she would sleep in my house again, and tomorrow, she would take her son to the beach in the stroller she stored in my garage, and this whole unpleasant episode would be behind them. Derek recapped the pen and sat back. He looked at me with an expression that was almost kind. The expression of a person who has beaten you, and can afford to be magnanimous about it. Okay, he said. Your turn. Sign the transfer deed and we'll get out of your hair. I did not touch the pen. I did not look at the deed. I looked at David. He opened his briefcase and removed a stapled document with a blue cover, the kind federal filings come in. He set it on top of the affidavit my brother had just signed, smoothly, without ceremony, the way you'd set down a glass of water. Cassie's eyes went to it immediately. What is that? That, I said, is Derek's Chapter 7 bankruptcy discharge. Southern District of Florida. Filed 14 months ago. Derek's expression did not change. Not yet. Ancient history. My debts were cleared. What does that have to do with anything? David opened to a marked page. Schedule B. Personal property declarations. Signed under oath before the federal bankruptcy trustee. He turned the document so it faced Derek and pointed to a line. You declared 0 cash savings, 0 liquid assets, 0 deposits of any kind. You swore to a federal judge that you were financially destitute. He tapped the affidavit Derek had just signed. 5 minutes ago, David continued, you swore on video, also under oath, that you have been holding $220,000 in personal cash savings. Cash you claim you held at the time you were asking the federal government to erase your debts. The silence was total. I watched my brother's face. I watched the moment the geometry of it landed. He couldn't have had $220,000 in savings 14 months ago during his bankruptcy and also truthfully declared 0 assets on his federal filing. Those two things could not coexist. He had just confessed to one of them on camera, and David Park was already holding the other. Cassie's hand went to the table. That's not, she started. I found the money after, Derek said. His voice had lost its ease. It was, I came into it later. After the discharge. The affidavit you just signed states these were funds held over time, not recently received, David said. Conversational, unhurried. It says personal cash savings you provided to your sister at the time of purchase. The purchase was 4 years ago. He paused. Before the bankruptcy. It was a gift. Derek stood up. The chair shrieked against the floor. From someone. It's not, this is a setup. He turned to me, and his face had changed into something I had not seen before. Not anger. Not the entitled frustration I had grown up watching, but something lower and more frightened. You tricked me. I told you exactly what you were signing, I said. I kept my voice even. You chose to lie because you wanted the house more than you wanted the truth. Give me that. He reached for the affidavit. David's hand came down on it. No force. Just presence. I can't. It's evidence. Evidence of what? We're family. He was breathing hard now. Cassie. Tell her. Tell her we're family. Cassie had gone white. She understood faster than he did. She had always been the sharper of the two. Mr. Marsh, David said quietly. I have an ethical obligation to report evidence of a felony. Before you leave this building, the video recording and signed affidavit will be electronically submitted to the bankruptcy trustee's office for the Southern District of Florida. He let a beat of silence pass. Concealing assets in a bankruptcy proceeding carries up to 5 years federal imprisonment and fines up to $250,000. In addition, your discharge will be revoked. The $43,000 in debt you erased comes back, with penalties. You can't. Cassie's voice had gone small. We have a son. I'm a lawyer, David said. I'm not a family member. And I need my license. Derek turned to me. There was something in his face that was unfamiliar enough to take a moment to identify. It was desperation. My brother, who had spent his whole life positioning himself as the one you helped, the one you extended patience to, the one who needed just a little more time and a little more grace, my brother was looking at me like I had done something to him. Viv. His voice cracked, just at the edge. Come on. We grew up together. You remember what it was like before Mom got sick. You remember the summer we drove to the Keys and the car broke down and we slept in it for 2 nights because we didn't have money for a room? He took a breath. That's us. That's who we are. I did remember. I had been thinking about it for 3 days, actually. The way he had made me laugh that whole drive. Even when we were stranded and sunburned and out of snacks. The way he had bartered with a gas station attendant and come back with 2 hot dogs and a handful of napkins and said dinner is served with the gravity of someone presenting a feast. I had loved my brother. In the way you love someone you grew up next to. The complicated, tangled love that does not survive being weaponized. I remember, I said. I also remember that you borrowed my phone 11 months ago and sent yourself a text from my number claiming ownership of my house, while your bankruptcy was still processing. I still have that text. I set my phone on the table, screen up, the screenshot visible. I also have a voicemail from that same period, where you described income you were earning on the side. Income you did not disclose to the trustee. The color left his face completely. You spent 8 months in my home, I said. You let your wife redecorate my guest room and wear my clothes and tell my neighbors you owned the property. You changed the locks on a house I paid for with 11 years of work. And then you came here today and committed federal fraud on camera because you thought I was still the sister who would get tired and write you a check. I stood. My legs felt steady. I'm not her anymore. Derek collapsed back into his chair. Cassie had both hands covering her mouth. He looked up at me, finally, with something I had never seen from him before. Not remorse, I want to be honest about that. It was the look of a person who has miscalculated so completely that they cannot yet find the edges of what they've done. The police are already on their way to the property, David said, gathering his documents. Given the fraudulent entry, there is no valid tenancy claim. They will be asked to vacate. If they are present when officers arrive and do not comply, there will be an additional charge for criminal trespass. Cassie made a sound that had no name. Derek put his head in his hands. I picked up my bag. I looked at him one more time. He had the same face he'd had that summer in the Keys, the same jaw, the same eyes that had always looked slightly too innocent for what was actually behind them. You made a choice, I said. You chose to treat me like a resource instead of a person. Every time I helped you and you didn't pay it back, you were making that choice. Every time you borrowed something without asking and returned it without acknowledgement, you were making that choice. And when you walked into my home and locked the door behind you, you made it in neon lights. I pulled my bag onto my shoulder. I didn't do this to you, Derek. You built this. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. I walked out. 2 officers were already in the lobby when I reached the ground floor. David had called them the moment Derek had lurched toward the table. I watched through the glass as an elevator opened on the 14th floor and my brother and his wife were escorted out. The Range Rover key fob in Derek's hand, the only thing he had come in with that still belonged to him. The federal response moved faster than I expected. Within 60 hours of David's submission, the bankruptcy trustee issued an emergency motion to vacate the discharge. The assets, what little there were frozen. The Range Rover was seized. Derek's discharge was revoked, and the original debt reinstated with fines. He was charged with bankruptcy, fraud, and perjury, and entered a plea agreement that resulted in a suspended sentence and 3 years of supervised probation, which I understand is somewhat more lenient than it might have been, but which also means he carries a federal fraud conviction for the next decade. Cassie's brother drove down from Orlando and helped her move out their belongings. She did not return my dress. I did not call about the dress. I went back to the house 2 days after they left. It was a Friday evening, the sky going orange over the water, pelicans moving in their slow line along the horizon. My living room had been rearranged. The guest room, the one I had planned to use as an office, had a mural on one wall, painted, I was told, by a friend of Cassie's, pale yellow with small clouds. The refrigerator had a child lock on it. The back deck had a baby monitor mounted to the railing. I stood in the middle of my living room for about 10 minutes. Then I called a realtor. I listed the house 3 weeks later. It sold in 11 days for more than asking. The market was hot, and the location was irreplaceable. And after fees and the remaining tax implications, I came away with just over $400,000. I bought a 1-bedroom condominium in a building in the Wynwood neighborhood of Miami, on the 6th floor, with a balcony where I can see a fragment of the sky, and no one can come to my door without being announced by the front desk. I changed my number. I deleted the text thread. I blocked every account I could identify. What I kept was the voicemail. Not as leverage, not as documentation. I kept it because sometimes, when I am uncertain whether I was too hard or not hard enough, when I hear the part of myself that was raised to believe that family is something you protect at cost to yourself, I play it back. My brother's voice, 2 a.m, slightly guilty, promising he would pay me back, describing the side income he was hiding from federal regulators, using the word trust the way people use it when they have already decided it doesn't apply to them. I play it and then I go make coffee and look out at my Wynwood sky and I feel something that takes a while to name. It is not satisfaction exactly. It is not grief. It is the feeling of a person who has finally stopped funding the thing that was draining her. The quiet that is left when you stop waiting for someone to become who you needed them to be. If you believe that protecting yourself is not the same as being cruel, leave a comment and tell me. And if you have someone in your life who treats your boundaries like suggestions, watch what happens when you stop making exceptions. Subscribe and come back. I'll be here.